All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, for choosing to spend your Thursday evening with us here on our online yarning circle and conversation, Our Recovery, Our Way, stories from Lismore locals who are shaping change and strengthening community in the climate crisis. And as you're joining us, I'd really invite you just to get comfortable and to also just pop in the chat, which is just down below on the Zoom, if you like, your name, your pronouns, which country that you're Zooming in from, if you know, because we've actually got a whole range of people here from near and far. And you're all welcome to join us here. And we'd love to know who you are, where you've come from. You can share why you've joined if you want to, but I'll just give you a moment to pop that in the chat. And while you're doing that, I really want to start this conversation by acknowledging that I'm on the traditional lands of the Widjabul Wia-bal people, and that many of the speakers, many of the beautiful people who are going to be yarning together tonight are here on Widjabul Wia-bal land or on Bundjalung country. Is any of the speakers, are any of you not on, are you any of you on different country just while I'm here? Yeah, I think we're all on that one. And in this acknowledgement, I want to acknowledge the rich wisdoms and traditions of Widjabul Wia-bal people, of all First Nations people on this continent, of their incredible resilience in the face of colonization and in the context of our changing climate. And I want to acknowledge the incredible leadership. We're here to talk about community recovery and our community, and we have an enormous amount of wisdom, experience, and leadership from Widjabul Wia-bal and Bundjalung mob and surrounding nations and tribes who have demonstrated what it is to lead and what it is to walk with and alongside. And we saw that with the work of Kuri Mail after the floods and in their ongoing efforts, you know, nearly 10 months after the floods. I want to acknowledge that there would be many of those people who could be here and share. I did invite them, but they're very busy, and you've got to try hard. You've got to keep building relationships. And I want to acknowledge that beautiful Auntie Carly Atkinson was going to be here. She has Bundjalung ancestry herself as well. She's an incredible person. We're going to weave some of her experience and knowledge into this yarn tonight. Unfortunately, Carly won't be joining us because she's just come down with COVID. So we're just going to hold her, the essence of Carly and her working community as we have this yarn together. So I want to acknowledge that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land, and that everything that we do here in community, wherever we are, is grounded in the fact that we're all on Aboriginal land. And that I was having a chat to a beautiful elder, Leonie, who I got to speak to about doing this webinar, and had a beautiful yarn on the phone with her yesterday. And she said that I could share, she's a Widjabul elder, and she said that I could share a message that is about how important it is for us to all walk together alongside each other. And so I just wanted to share that And I asked her, what does she most love about Lismore? And she said that she feels acceptance here, and that she has always felt that acceptance, and that Lismore is a very special place, a very connected place. And I just also want to acknowledge all of our ancestors and all of our histories and the wisdoms and the teachers in our lives collectively, from whatever backgrounds you come from. My name's Maddie. I have got a mixed bag of stuff going on in my heritage, and, you know, European white, predominantly displaced white people who came over here, stolen generation history on my grandmother's side, my nan's side, myself, and just acknowledge anyone else here who has got First Nations heritage themselves too. But let's all hold that together, hold our ancestry and the truth of where we all come from and the resilience of all of our stories as we're here. So thank you. I feel really strongly about making acknowledgements of country more than just a tokenistic gesture, and about giving it the time and space that I think it needs in this time. So I appreciate you listening. And I would now like to, we're going to get into it all, but I would now like to invite my dear friend and speaker in tonight's yarning circle, Paul Walker, to just guide us through a bit of a grounding exercise to get us into this yarn tonight. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Maddie. And hello, everyone. Actually, Carly Atkinson was going to be leading us through a grounding exercise to start off this webinar, this conversation. But as Maddie said, Carly can't make it. But Carly has shared with us the grounding exercises that she was hoping to do. And so I would like to share that with all of you in memory of Carly. I think Carly created this and put this together. And this grounding exercise is based on Dadiri, which is a practice of deep listening for Aboriginal people. And it's a very meditative practice where you're really taking in and absorbing the country that's around you and that you're part of, and feeling that country in yourself, in your inner essence. So this is Dadiri. It's a sitting meditation, and as we sit here, we're going to visit country. So I just invite you all to get comfy if you're not already. Find a comfortable position and just close your eyes. To begin with, start by congratulating yourself for being here and giving thanks to yourself, a moment of gratitude for taking the time to just be. As you settle in, I'd like you to direct your attention to your breathing. And like a leaf gently floating down to the ground, I want you to start following your breath as it moves in and out of your body. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Allow your stomach to expand as you breathe in. Hold the breath for a short moment and then breathe out of your mouth slowly. Allow your body to relax on the out breath. With each breath that you take, I want you to consciously slow your breathing down. Breathe in through your nose, hold for a few seconds, and then exhale out of your mouth. With each breath that you take, your body is becoming more relaxed and your mind is becoming clearer and more focused. As you continue to breathe and hold those breaths, start to count your holds. See if you can hold your breath for up to 4 counts. So you breathe in through your nose, hold for 4, breathe out through your mouth, and then hold for 4. Establishing a rhythm in your breathing. When thoughts and emotions or physical feelings or sensations come up, or external sounds, just accept them, give them space, and let them go without judging or focusing on them. If you notice your attention is going off with a thought or a sound or something, just gently bring yourself back to your breath and continue. It's totally fine and natural for thoughts to arise and for your attention to go to them. But as this happens, just keep coming back to your breath. Now, as you breathe, I'd like you to picture a place that is your favorite place. It could be by the beach, in a forest, on a sandhill overlooking the sea, or by a river. This place speaks to you and is where you feel at peace and most comfortable. As you continue to breathe, keep focusing on that place and pay attention to how it feels to be in this place, which we'll call your country. Listen to the sounds of your country. What can you hear? Does your country talk to you? Now I want you to try to open your heart up to country. Feel your spirit rise to greet and embrace the life of this place. Like an old friend, country sings to you and welcomes you home. As you sit in your country, pay attention to your body and notice any places in your body that might be tense or have particular sensations that draw your attention to them. With your breath, direct the flow of your breath to those places in your body. Allow them to fill up with your life force. And allow your body to relax and loosen. Now with your breath, start to move away or drift away from your country. Allow that place or that image to fade as you come back to your breathing and your body. And when you're ready, you can gently start to open your eyes. You might want to stretch or move those parts of your body that were calling to you earlier. And as we finish up, just take a moment to remember how being in that image or that embodied country felt for you. And hopefully you can keep that with you for the rest of this yarn that we're having tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you to Carly for gifting us that beautiful practice, which really just grounds us in our intention for us to stay well and safe and connected while we're having this chat tonight. You know, it has the potential to be a big, heavy conversation, and we're being really mindful of that tonight, and we're being really aware of our own well-being as, you know, disaster affected people, and we all carry different levels of affectedness in terms of, you know, the major flooding and the major weather events, and, you know, overlapping struggles and overlapping crisis events that have been happening. So I really want to invite everyone here tonight, and there's 30 of us, 31. I really want to invite you all to remember that grounding and remember that breath, and do whatever it is that you all need to do to stay well, safe and supported while we're having this yarn tonight. And, you know, if that looks like tuning out, that's okay. If it looks like stepping away, that's okay. We're going to be sharing some things about like self-care and collective care. And, you know, I also want to invite you to use the chat function. If anyone has any links to great wellbeing resources or mental health and wellbeing supports, and you want to share a couple of those, like, go for it in the chat. I'm now going to just jump into why we're here and the flow of this yarn tonight, and explain a bit about the format of the evening. For anyone who hasn't gotten to put in the chat where you're from and who you are, please feel free to pop your name, your pronouns, which country you're on, and if you want to share, if you're part of a group or a organization or whatever it is that you get up to that, you know, made you want to come tonight, really happy for you to share that in the chat too. So, what is this all about? Our recovery, our way, stories from us Lismore locals who are shaping change and strengthening community in the climate crisis. We're here and we're recognizing that this is just some of us. These people are just some of the people out of the many, frankly, hundreds of people, thousands of people who could just as easily be here sharing story and wisdom and knowledge with you all about how they participated and continue to participate in demonstrating and showing and leading the way with and around and alongside each other in response to what was the most devastating flood that we've ever experienced, in what was the most honestly traumatizing, like, climate disaster for lots of different reasons that many of us will have experienced, that I've certainly witnessed in my lifetime. And that is an ongoing struggle. So just recognizing that there were so many people that have stories of impact, of how they were affected, and stories of how they stepped up from being just community, wrapping around community, from people who, from all walks of life, all abilities, all genders, all cultural backgrounds, from people near, far and everywhere who decided that they wanted to support Lismore. So we really want to honor that. And some of you will be here in this Zoom. Some of you, I can see, you know, are active yourself in our community's recovery, or have been, or maybe you're here and you live in an area that has been impacted by fire or flood or drought, by some level of climate destruction. And we're not going to be going too much into climate destruction. We're not going to be going too much into how we feel politically about any of that. We know that we're living in a climate changed world, and we know that we need more action on that. And if anyone knows it, it's people from Lismore. So we're going to try our best to actually focus on the stories of possibility, of how we generated possibility, of how we created and shaped change towards more joy, towards more connection, towards healing, and towards a level of recovery. And we're going to unpack what that means to us all. So there will be a time at the end of this yarn for all of you, you know, probably about half an hour towards the end, towards 8, we're going to give everyone a chance to ask questions. And there will be chances throughout. You can pop questions or comments in the chat, and I'll do my best as the space holder of our yarning circle tonight to pick up on some of those things, but there will be space at the end. So please think on that, write it down, hold that thought. And yeah, this is really a conversation between the people who are speaking, and it's not just about me being a top down, I want you to all say this thing. This is about me being alongside people who are also going to hold the conversation and generate and direct the way that our yarn goes with each other. And it might be a bit messy. It might get a bit loose. We're all going to do our best to like give each other space to talk. We all probably have a lot to say. We're going to all try and be mindful of our time with each other. And we've had some prep chats, but yeah, we're just going to do our best. This is an imperfect space. And I really want you to all imagine as if we're all in a big circle around a campfire and we're all looking at each other. And yeah, if you do feel bold enough, we'd love your camera on, but I do understand that as we're recording, you might not feel comfortable, but if you do, we'd love to see your face. Also, if you could just keep your Zooms on mute, that would be really helpful. And as I said at the end, you'll get a chance to ask your question. So that will be great. So finally, I'm going to introduce everybody. I do feel called to introduce Carly because I feel like she was here. We had a few other people pull out and they were happy to pull out because of their capacity and where they're at, and really want to honor that. So I really want to honor that my dear friend and Katie Cooper-Wares was going to be here, but she had some work come up. She's incredible. She's part of the Creative First Aid Network. I think that might get teased out in the conversation. Sally Amber was going to be here. She's an incredible local who's helped create the Reclaiming Our Recovery Network. That's going to come out. But I do want to share a bit about Carly, as Carly is, holds a lot of wisdom. And so, and the Yarning Circle format that we're sharing together comes from Carly. So it feels really appropriate. So Carly Atkinson is a Bundjalung and Yiman woman and an accredited social worker with a PhD. She's an associated professor and an international leader in complex and intergenerational trauma and culturally informed strengths-based healing approaches in Indigenous Australia. She's the CEO of her family organisation, We Are Lee, designing and coordinating the delivery of culturally informed trauma-integrated healing approaches, training and resource development for organisations and communities across Australia, focusing on systems transformation and implementation. She's an associate professor at the University of Melbourne. And during the February floods this year, Carly was part of establishing the Northern Rivers Community Healing Hub, a collective of Indigenous and non-Indigenous practitioners that offer trauma-informed and culturally informed healing practices for all. So I know there's some people here this evening from the Healing Hub. I just want to give you a massive shout out. Thank you for being there with and alongside Carly. And we're sorry that Carly's sick tonight, but she's here with us. And so are Sally, and so are Katie. So I'm now going to introduce our other speakers who are here with us this evening. And I'm going to start with Kate. Kate, can you give everyone a wave? Hi, Kate. Kate Coxall, have I said your last name right? Sweet. Is a change maker, an entrepreneur from a young age. She's used her social science degree and community service experience to develop programs and campaigns across a wide range of climate, environmental, and social justice causes, such as Stop Adani, XR, Free the KP 120, which is about refugees, Fridays for Forests, and she's spent 2 years as the New South Wales Greens Climate Action Working Group convener and Coal Transition Working Group convener. She's now a board member of Surf Rider Northern Rivers, and she's recently started a role as the campaigner and researcher for Surf Rider Foundation Australia, fighting climate change and environmental challenges to our coastal systems. After the floods this year, Kate put together a rescue coordination for teams of humans, their pets, and their livestock in the Richmond Valley area. And for the second flood, yes, the second flood that then happened 4 weeks after that one, she mobilized and sent 7 boats to Lismore and Coraki again. Her vision is to have a connected, cohesive, and prepared community with a top-bottom climate, environmental, and social action that supports a decolonized and sustainable, equitable future for all. And she's most of all proud of, she's a proud solo mother to one incredible 8-year-old climate warrior. Thanks so much for being here, Kate.
Thanks so much, Maddie. And I've got my little climate warrior in the background too.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm now going to introduce Paul Walker. Paul, can you give us a big wave, please?
Hi, everyone.
So Paul is a dancer, dance and experimental performance artist, maker, and arts worker who lives, works, and plays on Widjabul Wia-bal, Bundjalung country. Paul is passionate about community-focused and culturally relevant art practices that are inclusive and trauma-informed. After completing a Statement of Attainment in Arts Administration, Community Art and Cultural Development, in 2017, Paul stepped into the role of Program Coordinator at Milk Crate Theatre from 2018 and 19, and was also engaged as a support artist in a range of MCT programs during that time. Whilst at MCT, Paul began working with people with lived experience of homelessness, mental health support needs, and disability. Paul was the lead facilitator of the dance ensemble at Studio Arts in Hornsby, Sydney from 2017 to 2020. And during that time also supported and performed with Ruckus Ensemble. Paul is currently leading a creative recovery project for the Northern Rivers LGBTQIA SB+ community that includes a series of free performance and creative arts workshops that will culminate in a public presentation in December later this month. Paul also helped establish and coordinate, and I'm sharing this, Paul didn't write it, a fundraiser which I think raised, how much did we raise, Paul?
It was $46,460.
To the T, and that's because you've been still working on the books for that.
That's me, yeah.
Sorting out that.
That went It's 41 people in the community as well.
Yeah, so that was all about supporting the queer community in Lismore who were devastated by the floods. So that was an amazing effort as well. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
I'm now going to introduce Mim. Mim, can you give us a wave? And your name's actually Miriam.
Miriam.
Tozillo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you've written yours in the first person. Would you still like me to read it? Or would you like to read it?
I could read it if I had it in front of me. You could read it in the first person. You could pretend to be me.
I'll do that. I'll do it. I've got this. So Mim's a grandparent coming to live in Lismore to be close to family. Before Mim moved here, she was taken to the Bentley blockade by her daughter, where she camped there with her partner and children. This was an experience that affirmed that this was the right place for her. Mim has a doctorate in dance education, originally training at the Laban Centre, UK, and more recently with People Dancing Foundation for Community Dance in is it Leicester?
Yeah, Leicester. So.
Leicester, that's how traveled I am, in the UK, with Dance Exchange in Tacoma, Washington. And with any professional development she could get her hands or body on while living in far north Queensland and working as a dance specialist in schools and community. Mim continues to work as a sessional tutor in pre-service education, a community artist offering free dance classes for over 65s or anyone, and dance with children at Tuntable Falls Community Preschool once a week. Mim's political involvement is as an anti-militarist and climate activist with the organisation Wage Peace and affiliated activist groups, locally, in Meanjin and nationally. Mim has dealt with and continues to deal with the experience and trauma of the flood herself by involving herself in the community response. Mim says that she's always buoyed by the strength, resilience, and creativity and concern for the planet and the people of Lismore. Thank you so much for being here, Miriam. Rebecca, can you give everyone a wave? I'm struggling not to cry reading about you all. I'm sure I'm not alone. Rebecca Ryan, in the month after Lismore and the surrounding areas were hit by the devastating floods, which destroyed Rebecca's local handmade collective store and creative workshop space and business. Rebecca organised a team of volunteers who created thousands of heart banners, just like this one, which have become an iconic symbol of hope in our community. Rebecca then co-founded the Love for Lismore Heart Space, a community creative hub, encouraging healing through creativity and connection. Thanks, Rebecca. Harper.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. Thanks, Maddie.
No worries. Harper Dalton. Have I said your last name right, Harper?
It's technically Harper Dalton, but either or.
Dalton. Harper has been advocating for the relocation of our hardwood timber homes to higher ground. Founding the group Relocate Lismore Homes, Harper has lived in Widjabul Wia-bal country his whole life, and his home was severely impacted by the February flood. Harper has a long record of work and study within the social services sector, including a Cert 4 and Diploma of Community Services, a Bachelor of Social Welfare, and a Master's in Social Work, including registration with the Australian Association of Social Workers. Harper is committed to social justice and equitable systems-based solutions with social and ecological lens. And I'm just here because I love our community. I'm Maddie. I really just feel strongly about getting people into a room together. I've been doing flood recovery stuff for 5 years since the last one. But I won't go into all of that because I'm just so excited to hear from everyone else here tonight. So maybe we could just take a deep breath, because that was all a lot. You've all done so much. You are all so much, and we're so lucky to have you here. So
I would just like to add thank you, Maddie, for putting on such a brilliant event and highlighting the community grassroots action that has taken place and where we all kind of sit within that. So just thank you for putting on such a great event.
thank you. You know, very briefly, I just want to say there are people in this room, in this Zoom call, who have shaped the person I am, who have contributed to supporting me and mentoring me and showing me the way, and that yarning circles are the way, and that collaboration and connection in community is the way, and that grassroots community-led will always be the way that we save ourselves and each other, and that we strengthen community with and alongside the official structures that exist, but it will always be from us, from the ground up. So thank you. All right. Wow. Now then, imagining that we're all in a circle, that Paul, Miriam, Harper, Kate, Rebecca, that we're all in a circle with each other, all 31 of us, 32. And I want to invite the circle, whoever feels called to start, you know, and that maybe a few minutes each, loosely. But if someone feels called to jump in out of the speakers to ask a question of each other in and amongst that, that's okay. That we just spend, you know, a bit of time yarning about, in reflection of the fact that it's 10 months since the flood, just about 9 or 10. I'm losing count. That you've all played a crucial role, as we've heard. Yep. I want to understand and invite you to share, what does community-led recovery mean to you? What does community resilience mean to you? These are words that get thrown around a lot. What does it mean for you in the context of what you've all been doing? And who wants to share first? And I might just pop the little Zoom hand up when it's been like 5 minutes or something like this. And we'll move on if it doesn't organically happen.
Well, look, I can start. I'm happy to start the conversation, the yarning circle. I would say that community resilience for me, and where a lot of my advocacy has been centered around, is the preservation of the community as we know it. And we know that climate change is getting worse and people need to have flood-free futures. And unfortunately, the way that colonization has happened and the settlement of Lismore occurred, it led people to be very flood vulnerable. And whilst that everyone is impacted, just like triage in a hospital, there's varying degrees of impact to people, and some people are in extremely high risk areas. So I've spent a lot of my life here in the rainforest, in country, on the ground. My grandfather was a part of the Aquarius Festival that settled in Tuntable Falls, and as a part of the multiple occupancy there that's existed for the past 40 years or something. So for me, the community and the culture that we have here, including the Indigenous culture, I include that as a big component of it, is so important. And it really comes back to what you've said, Maddie, around, you know, collaborating with each other, and true resilience is bringing everybody along. And I think that that's why it's so important that we do work together in collaboration with all of our different ideas.
Thanks, Harper. Do you want to do your slides now?
I can start by doing my slides. However, I'm very open to other people talking about this discussion point more. But if it felt appropriate for me to do a quick presentation and then for it to go back into what it is, I'm very flexible for the nature of the meeting.
I feel like it would be a great time just to, given the questions about your work and what you have felt that community resilience meant to you, you've lived it in a real, like you've got this beautiful big example of how you've modeled that, I think. And it would be amazing to hear a bit about Relocate Lismore Homes and what you've been up to there.
All right, done. So I come from a financially disadvantaged background. I was actually raised in foster care, even though my biological grandfather has different components that I've just spoken about. People that live in the most flood risk areas are usually the most socially and economically disadvantaged. So when I was at my grandparents' displaced from my primary property, which was flood impacted because that's all I could afford, if I didn't stay here and buy the property that I did, I don't know where I would go and nowhere else is home for me. So I bought the property that was available and affordable to me at the time. And that will eventuate. But basically, I was at my grandparents dealing with my flood impacted property. And I thought, I was living in an apartment in a rental for 7 years on top of the CBD business called Godfrey's, which was a vacuum shop. And my cat died of 10 years in the 2017 flood. How many times can a community go through the destruction and rebuild itself? So I was sitting at my grandparents, I'm like, what can we do? Like, we can't keep going through this as a community. So I decided to put my ideas there about we need to relocate the flood impacted properties and maybe businesses, but that's kind of outside of my ballpark. Anyway, I made a post. It created a lot of traction. People really agreed with this idea on, the majority basis. And then I created the Facebook group, hence Relocate Lismore Homes, the start of the slides. So, where and why and where to next? Because it's a very controversial issue. People really love living where they are, and I understand that. It's a beautiful place, particularly north and south. The majority of residents have lived here for a very long time, and they're very sentimental about the area that they live in. So the historical snapshot of Lismore is that it's a flood-prone area. Unfortunately, the colonizers and the settlers did not listen to the Indigenous populations that lived here previously. Hence, we've settled on an area that is extremely flood prone. I'm going to skip through a lot of this because there's a lot of information here, but basically, the majority of the homes are hardwood. They're made out of cedar and teak. The reason the Lismore was settled where it is because the river was there to create the trade from the cedar and teak. And a lot of the homes, which the first settlement areas in Lismore are north and south. So a lot of those homes were built out of old brush timber. You can't get it, it's irreplaceable. So why relocation? Well, it saves money. We're not depleting more forest to create more houses. We're actually relocating the houses that exist out of the hardwood timber. We're saving the cultural heritage and the community identity. If you speak to people who have come to Lismore, they always talk about the beautiful Queenslander homes. Those homes were made out of the forest that the colonizers destroyed. So why would we sit back and allow them to be destroyed again, to have new softwood homes that are nowhere near as durable and cost more money? It's better for the planet. There's actually, based on the New South Wales guidelines, estimated 28% of overall landfill is regarding demolition or construction waste. So the avoidance of that actually contributes to better climate change outcomes because we're not adding to the landfill, which is already a big problem. And also relocating recycled materials generally just overall has less greenhouse gases and less impacts on the environment. The hardwood homes are usually better. The timber's water resistant, mold resistant. It's, it would sell for millions. My house personally would be worth more on the Sydney market as the materials than the structure itself. But to me, it represents sentimentality. It's a beautiful home, and I don't think that it should be demolished. It also saves time in the sense that every house that can be relocated, not every house can be. Some houses are brick, some houses are not suitable, some houses are financially not viable to be relocated. But it saves time by relocating a house as opposed to building houses. Also, we have a national trade and materials shortage. So that compounds the price and compounds the time. So relocation, when you think about it in a logical standpoint and financial, environmental, sustainable, it just makes sense.
Mm.
Go to the next slide.
Oh, yeah.
So the Lismore City Council position, and this document was put out in response to the major February flood, is that a staged retreat occurs for North and South Lismore, and that is the most flood impacted area of Lismore. And when I was a part of a documentary recently, they asked me, do you feel like you're living in a climate slum? And I really reflected on that question. I said, yes, just the way that the levee's been built, and the levee actually creates worse flooding for North and South Lismore. I personally feel like I'm living in a climate slum. If you look at the way that the high school, Richmond River, has been relocated in demountable buildings in the back of Lismore High, as opposed to the private school getting a much better facility in the university complex, there really is a social disparity and disadvantage in how things have been managed. And whether that's just public sector versus private sector, there's a social disparity in terms of the vulnerability of the population in North and South, which actually brings me back to the slide that was missed because it didn't load, is that there's statistical evidence to show that the most economically and socially disadvantaged populations actually are compounded in floodplains because that's all they can afford. So statistically, based on the census data in 2016, the majority of people in the worst flood impacted areas in Lismore were under the average income, weekly income, based on the census data, and some under $650 a week. So that compounds why people weren't able to get flood insurance. Some people are elderly, they might have a disability, they might have a range of intersectional disadvantage, which creates their overall situation. They can't afford flood cover, they're getting flooded more often, and there's less government intervention to help them in terms of what I was discussing around that climate slum and disparity. So the Lismore Council's position was that they were going to manage a staged retreat of North and South Lismore. The figures there are around 890 homes were impacted, with 870 total that could be relocated. Some people won't want to do that. So I would personally estimate, based on my research, it's probably between 500 and 700 homes to be relocated in North and South Lismore maximum. And then if you include the homes that are in East Lismore and other areas of the Central Basin that have also been flood impacted, you're probably looking at maximum 1,000 homes. And I would say that quite confidently, maximum 1,000 homes, probably less when you start actually looking at what homes can be relocated. So the Northern Rivers Reconstruction Corporation position, and this was omitted in the Byron Shire Echo on November 16th, is that they are working on a 5-year timeline. Now, the merits of that is very debatable, because 5 years is an extremely long time when you're living in a flood impacted property with no future, with the threat that it could flood again literally next week, next month, next year, in 5 years. No one knows. And that's just the reality of the situation. They're going to be focusing on land that's already suitably zoned and close to existing infrastructure. They're not going to put people 30 kilometres out of Lismore, and they're not going to focus on land where they have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to create the infrastructure. They're going to try and do things on a shorter time frame and as efficiently as possible, in context of the community input and what's going to be acceptable in that community. Buybacks are expected to start from early 2023, and land release is expected to come online in 12 months. Now, 12 months, once again, comes back to, it's quite a long time for people. I'm just regurgitating the information. I have no influence into how this is coordinated. David Witherton, yeah.
I'm just wondering, and sorry to interrupt you, obviously it's a big thing. It's a big campaign.
It's
And
huge.
it's so personal. I'm just wondering, like, I'm thinking we could probably come back to the where to. A question later on is going to be about where to next, and about what people need to know about what you're all up to.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, just to tie some of that up, about what Relocate Lismore Homes has been for you in terms of like community recovery. What is it that has felt, it's been an enormously, from what I've seen, empowering thing for people to get on board with. And your voice in particular has been like you've shown a way, you've given a clear path, a very well-researched and clear path forward. How has that meant, what has that meant for you in your community recovery?
In my personal life, it's given me hope for the future. I love Lismore so much, and I believe that it's the people that make the community, not the community that makes the people. However, there may be some influence, it could cross over. But I want to see the population that we currently have in the community that I love so dearly stay here. I don't want people to be subject to the free market under a buyback where they can't stay in the area that they love. I would be under that as well. Nowhere else is home to me, and I really want to see people have the option to stay here and not to be forced out under the buyback. So community resilience for me is having a flood-free and secure future, but also having a choice that, if your home has been destroyed, or perhaps that the trauma of what's happened in February, you can take a buyback and you can leave. And that's why I feel that both are needed, but a land swap is very much missing, and it has to be included in the equation.
Thank you so much, Harper. And thank you so much for sharing that. Who feels community resilience, community recovery, big, loaded, big emotions, lots of different things, obviously. Miriam.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to follow on from what Harper's saying, because I'm one of the people, waiting to find out where I'll be going next. And I think what it means to me, because I've been through cyclones and some other things, but this was a completely different. And when I walked from the flat that I was in, which was completely inundated, and the first place I came to was Koori Mail and what was set up there. And then instantly, straight into it. That's where I'd have my breakfast in the morning. And the thing I learned from, the get-go, I suppose, when I was rescued, when I was taken into the homes of people as a flood refugee, and then starting to just, I was cleaning up. There was a lot of cleaning. I was cleaning and cleaning, and starting to come into these spaces like Koori Mail, and then Trees Not Bombs, and over at the SCU at the recovery centre there. This thing kept coming back about the power of people. The power came back to the people because the government couldn't or wouldn't do what was needed. And it seemed like a very simple approach, really. It's just don't ask, don't wait to be told, just do it. And that was happening all over the place. So there was a moment that really exemplified that at Trees Not Bombs, when a person from the council came, spoke to one of the team about the fact that we shouldn't be pouring the washing up water into a particular drain. and that person came straight back at the council and said, well, we look forward to you coming back to us with a solution, and put it right back to them, because this was the thing I knew about it, and it affirmed for me that in the future, now, which is the future, really, isn't it? Every second is the future. That that it's the people who know best about what they need, and the best thing that the governments and instrumentalities could do is to equip and support the people to do the thing that they know best. And you know, so that's in line with, you know, the other work that I do in with Wage Peace is people have the right and the power to speak into the political space. And so, you know, we're kind of in a new stage now, you know, as we're moving forward, we're going to this process of relocation or whatever it is, that I think that the people, considering the fact that we are living in this time, that the people have the right to speak up, to demand, to speak strongly to governments, to councils, to the corporations, and to start to speak up, speak our voice, to demand even, to stress the urgency for information to come, for you know, for these organisations like the corporation, to start to respond to the people. And just briefly to finish, I guess, just to mention this organisation, that this group of people that came together, and Sally is one of those, reclaiming our recovery, and our thinking is now in this time as we move forward, that our concern was that disaster shouldn't be a business. It shouldn't be a business, and it shouldn't be in the hands of developers and people are going to make money out of our, you know, out of the disaster that's affected us. So what we want to ask of the corporation and the government and the council is that it needs to be transparency of decision making systems and processes, that democracy needs to be participatory, it needs to involve us, and that and we won't shy away from speaking of the reality of the climate crisis and the need for governments to actually step up and to start to work with communities, because we are the ones that are going through it. So that's, I guess I've learned from, you know, I'm just one person who just stepped into a space where there are beautiful people that I knew, and new people. So relationships and, you know, people's voice, really. I think that's, Lismore does that well, right? You know?
Lismore does do that well. You're so right. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Miriam. Yeah.
Can I follow on from that? Because there was something that Mim mentioned, and it also reminds me of something that Katie Cooper-Wares mentioned at, you did another online webinar talk a few months ago, earlier on, after the floods, about finding your purpose in the flood. And
Thank
and
you.
funny that Katie said, but also something that Mim mentioned then about, I mean, there are a few things, I've got a few ideas, but something about just doing it, like from the community, like not asking questions or asking permission to do something, but just doing what you feel needs to be done or what is needed. And the thing is, because we're on the ground and we're part of the community, we're connected to the other people in this community. So we have a better idea of what people need and what people are talking about, because we're all going through it together, you know, and we're feeling it ourselves also. And so, yeah, and then also going back to that idea of like having our own voice. I think it's important that we are heard in what we need, and we're heard in also in what we're doing to support what's needed. There is, and with, yeah, I don't know, so many tangents, but you know, Katie Cooper Ware's also kind of started up the first Creative First Aid Alliance, and I think this is a real testament to the community of Lismore. We are the heart of the Rainbow region. We have such a creative, I mean, it's quite queer as well, but such a creative, expressive, artistic community here. And something that I think has really come out of all of this as part of our community recovery is this real, there's just been this huge eruption of creative recovery options, or creative recovery kind of
Like
approach.
possibilities, hey.
So many, and it's really beautiful to see. I mean, it's I feel like the work that I'm doing at the moment is tied in with a bigger kind of umbrella or bigger picture of creative recovery, and it's you know, it might be a collage club that happens every week, or you know, the heart space that's open and running activities, or even the community healing hub like feels connected to this kind of creative approach to trying to help ourselves, support ourselves, to deal with the turmoil and the hardships that we're facing on a real personal kind of level. You know, like not the practical stuff. Of course, we need to scrub the floors and put new walls up, and all of that is, of course, it's needed. But it's like if all you're doing is day after day cleaning mud, and your spirit eventually starts to feel like mud, and it feels so heavy. And the fact that we've got so many offerings from the broad kind of community that are creative, artistic, encouraging people to come together, to share their stories, to move through or express in what, you know, whatever's held that they're holding on to. Like it's all a part of releasing and moving forward. And
it looks like Harper's got something to jump in with.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Back to you. Yeah.
I agree with absolutely everything you're saying, but in terms of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, shelter's the bottom need. And then as you move up, you start to get to self-actualization and other things. So we really need all of those things to be working in harmony in terms of, you know, people's individual flood recovery for their shelter, and then having those creative inputs where people can kind of work through their trauma and those other things that they might be experiencing.
It's
100.
like listen alongside, hey.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Just one little thing on that, and then, you know, I did this little just thing, setting up the dance class right near Trees Not Bombs. People are just wander in and do something for a bit, including their dogs would dance. And the thing about that, and the thing about what Paul's doing, and the thing about the Collage Club, and the thing about those is they're just there. You can come in when you want. It's something, I think it was Kim or somebody at one of your workshops, we were having a talk, and she said this thing to me, I think it was so beautiful, that it just in the aftermath of the flood, capitalism didn't exist because, well, there wasn't any shops. There was this what she called radical generosity. And it wasn't just, you know, I saw a beautiful moment at Corey Mail. It was a dance party, but some boxes of bananas were being delivered. And then a whole lineup of people started sending them along the line to take them from here to there. And one of them was a beautiful dancer, Monica Blanco. Of course, the way he would accept that box of bananas included a pirouette, and then everybody started dancing together. So there was no distinction between getting people food and doing ordinary things and being creative and being expressive. It was all, the generosity was in everything.
Like a web. So Paul, I wonder, do you mind just like, thank you so much, Mim and Harper, for those reflections and those responses. And, you know, it's obviously so ripe for a yarn, that stuff. and all the different things. Paul, can you tell us a little bit more about how your work, like what is that, what are you doing that's about recovery, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so look, and Harper, I absolutely agree. Like we need our bases like sorted for sure. And but yeah, as Min was saying, like I think it is this kind of having both there at the same time, you know, so that people have the option to kind of tap out from that, like just trying to survive, and they have the option to just tap out of that for an hour or 2 hours and do something where they can just be, or start to explore, you know, other ways of being, because it can get heavy at times, really. But yeah, I guess what I'm offering, look, is to a particular part of the wider community. My offering is for more for the queer or the LGBTIQA umbrella. What were the others? SB?
Sister girl and brother boy.
Okay, absolutely. Do you know, like the whole soup. But and so yeah, I was fortunate enough to receive some funding from Northern Rivers Performing Arts to run a program which includes a series of workshops that are held once a week. And these workshops are being led by different local artists who lead a workshop in a different art form each week. And so we've got, you know, an open door policy. People like Mim came to one of them, and a couple of them
Jex,
actually.
I think Jex is here.
And Jex is here. So Jex is leading the our next workshop on Saturday, which I'm super excited for. And so we've got people who are leading these workshops who are local residents who have all been here amongst it, who know, you know, what the community's going through. And yeah, we've just created a space where people within the queer community can come and connect and feel a greater sense of community by being there. And yeah, and something that's come up from these workshops, and I was chatting with Jex about this just today, and I'll try not to go for too much longer, but just these words that we're using, these words of recovery and resilience, and how so many people in Lismore are just getting so tired of hearing these words, and it's getting to a point where they just don't seem sufficient, like where it's like, if we think of to recover means like to go back to what was, you know, I got knocked over and I'm going to recover and come back to that same place. And that doesn't seem appropriate for where we are in a changing climate, you know. And this idea of resilience is also to spring back, but or to go back to, you know, but both of them are about returning to what was. And there's something about acknowledging and accepting the fact that we're living in a place that is like it is changing, and and we can't predict what the future is going to hold, and we are going to be hit with more floods and more fires, like that is inevitable. And so it's about like, how are these experiences helping us to actually change or shift or transform, so that we're not going back to what we were. We were here, we got knocked over, and then we're going to go up here or down here or transform into something else, so that we're hopefully, you know, and in my mind, transforming is also like moving all those hardwood houses up out of the floodplain. Like we need to transform the structural like landscape of Lismore. You know, we have to transform ourselves and how we support each other, how we are better prepared for future climate disasters. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Paul for PM, that's amazing. Like that's exactly right. And we've got Joe in the chat agreeing. We've got lots of people in there. So yeah, if you're resonating, if you're agreeing, if you've got thoughts on what is being discussed, please feel free to drop it in the chat and keep that yarning circle going between all of you in the chat. What do you reckon, Kate and Rebecca? Which one of you wants to share? What is this whole community recovery thing? What is it about? How do you feel about those words? What are you up to?
So you cool for me?
You go. Yeah.
All right. So totally vibing and resonating with what everybody's put down. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like one of my absolute favorite theories. You know, my background is social science. And in terms of community, so since the floods happened, we lost everything, helicoptered out, went into rescue mode. That has been always sitting in the back of my mind is kind of, you know, first is safety, like get everyone safe, get everyone and their whole family, you know, that's including their pets and making sure that their larger animals are taken care of, get that sorted, that basic baseline of safety. And then it's always been kind of what happens then, you know, is it, can we get people housed and can we get people secure in some form of home structure? For me, you know, community-led recovery and resilience and what drove us to take the action that we did, myself and Mark O'Toole, you know, we were neighbours and we were helicoptered out together and then we ran rescues together for a long yeah. And, you know, was something that I think for both of us was really strong is that just no one gets left behind. When a community runs something, then everyone, like we know who's still out there and we make sure that they're attended to. We make sure that they're checked on. We make sure that their needs are going to continue to be pulled along that train of needing to be met. You know, unfortunately, we're 9 months on and there's still a lot of needs that haven't been met. And I'm still finding that I'm beating the drum of saying, we can't normalize poverty in this situation, because if we allow the normalization of poverty as almost like the pilot of what climate destruction can look like, then it means that you know, but whilst when I don't want to be normalizing poverty in recovery and in resilience because it makes us not resilient, I do want to see the normalization of expression, of asking and receiving, and you know, telling the stories in a wider space like we're doing tonight, that you know, even when it's hard to tell the stories. And something that, you know, really struck me, and it's something that I've realized very much through the incredible support of this human next to me, when moving through these spaces of really dark times, finding the awe and the inspiration through simple things that bring hope can literally be what carries you through, whether it be some days it literally was minute to minute, not even day to day, it was minute to minute or hour by hour, but it was the little things that were actually really huge in my day, which, you know, to go and sit down and have a yarn in a weaving circle when I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders was massive. To come in here on the weekend and to be given a whole new set of beautiful handmade decorations and things that made my child light up when she'd been really anxious about what was it going to look like this year, you know, all those rituals and those things that we celebrated and gathered as a family, you know, these things that carry you through, that drive that inspiration, that drive that process, become the transformation. And I think that word, the word of transformation, is key for me to what recovery does look like, because there isn't any going back. There is only how do we go forward. And if we're going to go forward, particularly in the face of climate change, then surely we can do it better. And what Mim said about that moment where capitalism just wasn't in existence, I had that moment of realization too. And I'm seeing free shops. I'm seeing spaces where it's not about the haves and the have-nots. It's about let's just do this together, and everyone's welcome, everyone's included, and we can do incredible, wonderful things with crossover of spaces, with crossover of ideas. And if we're going to create a new home or a new way of being in the world, why not do it in a sustainable, waste-free, magical way? So I'm going to hand over after that.
So good. And, you know, just that reminds me, like, you've just painted such a beautiful picture. I remember carrying my basket. When you say that minute to minute stuff, one of the things that kept me going, like, I had a little basket that my partner bought me for my birthday. She's here, shout out Josie. That I bought my boom box around with me to every community hub that I was going to between Resilient Lismore and Koori Mail, and that's where I spent some of my time. I was just playing Mariah Carey in my basket while I was walking down the street, and that was just so that I could stay sane and that I could remember what makes me happy and bring joy to those around me in such a dark time. And I saw smiles and laughter, and I saw Koori Mail, like, people there just like swinging things along, passing donations, like they just had such big smiles on their faces. And to me, that's resilience. That's transformation in action, that sort of stuff, that connection. Rebecca, what do you reckon?
What I've been wanting to say, listening to the other people speaking, is absolutely, I agree with what Harper's talking about people requiring shelter. I didn't lose my home. I did lose 2 businesses. And in a funny way, I feel fortunate that that's all I lost. What a lot of people who have heard my story or seen me speak or read about what I've been doing probably aren't aware of is that I worked as a practice manager of a counselling service for 5 years. And I'm an administrative person. I'm not a clinical person, but I did a training course a few years ago through the Blue Knot Foundation about trauma. And the one thing that always stuck with me about this training course that I did is that the most powerful thing for healing, particularly from trauma, is connection. And for me, that means connection to your community, the people that you care about, but also your creativity. And creativity is very important to me. As people are aware, probably I owned a creative handmade shop. I owned a creative workshop space, both of which I lost in the flood. And I was walking around, you know, in shock and not really knowing what to do, trying to help people, burning out. And I thought, what can I do at home? And I started getting angry really quickly. And I thought, what can I do to not inflict my angry, horrible trauma self on people? So just started making banners. And, you know, that took off. Yep, we've all got one. And, you know, I think everybody knows the story of the banners. The response to that, not just in our community, but nationally, shocked me and overwhelmed me. I just think it's absolutely phenomenal. And I still find it weird. I was away a couple of weeks ago in Brisbane, and the lady that made my coffee in Brisbane knew who I was and what I'd been doing, because she'd seen it on TV, and I was just like, that's so weird. But from a simple thing like starting to sew banners and give them to people, we've now created the Heart Space, which is where we're sitting at the moment. And this is a space that is all about connection, community, and recovery. And I think it's incredible. You know, we're talking about, I think Paul mentioned before that you just have to do things and you just have to get things done. I'm one person with very, very limited resources. And
Also, you thought.
I did think that. You know, we, up until probably a month ago, we hadn't received any funding or any grants. Everything that we've done is based entirely on donation. This Heart Space is run by donations from the community. It's run by incredible volunteers. It's a really, really powerful thing. It overwhelms me all the time. I just feel like especially listening to everyone's intros, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just this person, you know, doing a thing. I don't have a lot of qualifications or background, but I guess I've got a lot of determination. In terms of the word resilience and how I feel about resilience, I feel like as a community, we've had no choice. I think we've had to do what we've had to do, and I think we've done it very well, particularly in terms of banding together as a community.
Yeah. Wow. So
100%.
powerful.
I'd just say to that 100%, like the reason why I was able to create Relocate Lismore Homes is because no one else was ever going to talk about it. The government isn't in the interest of relocating homes. And, you know, resilience is there because the community's been forced to have no other option but be resilient. And I think that that's where all of our strengths in our individual areas have really shined through. Unfortunately, due to having no choice, but also where we've been able to step up in the community and help many more people beyond ourselves as well in that.
And that kind of message also just from, you know, really reminds me of the strength, like in addition to what we're yarning about, just the Koori male leadership and how mob, like who, if we think about people having to go through hard times, you know, the last 250, whatever that number is of colonization and, you know, land dispossession, and that group of people is a shining example of like, we're just getting a taste, like white fellas, you know, like we do it tough as well. There's no doubting that. We know that the Lismore flood footprint is in the lowest socioeconomic, like that's where the cheaper houses are, and people of all different colors live there. But, you know, when we think about the impact of colonization too, we're just getting a taste of that. And they got to show us like their strength and resilience, if we can, you know, I'm getting sick of that word too, but we got to see how they have transformed that pain and struggle into just survival, connection, possibility, love of place, love of people. And you've all shown that. I'm wondering,
Maddie,
yeah,
and quickly to add, like that Koori male, like that was such a strong example of radical generosity.
yeah,
Like it was, and it really has, like, that's, to me, that's something that has really come out of this recovery period is these acts of radical generosity, and especially like just directly after the first floods, well, the first flood, and then even after the second one, just, I don't know, just feeling like being blown away and just by this community, and seeing people just wanting to help others, you know, like just seeing people do whatever they could within their capability, within their means to help others, you know. It might be just going to a friend's house and giving them and bringing food and water for the day because they don't have a kitchen and whatever, you know. Or it could be someone fronting a whole, you know, project and whatever, or starting up a space or whatever, like whatever people could do, they were doing it and then some. And that was just so beautiful to see. And it really has brought our community together. Like, I feel like, and it's funny, a few years ago, I had a friend who was over in Indonesia when there were some huge earthquakes over there, and they were telling me the story of what happened, and they made this comment that has really stuck with me. They said, "Oh, nothing like a natural disaster to bring people together." And I thought, and I was like, because they were explaining that they were in a field with a whole range of different people, and everyone was just helping each other because everyone was scared, you know, and it didn't matter who you were or where you were living or where you came from or what color your skin was or anything, you know. It was like just people, yeah, I don't know, just come together in these kind of situations. And it was really, it's really strengthened our community, I feel.
Can I just jump in as well? Not only has it strengthened our community, but it's almost allowed this space for that creativity that was sitting underneath the surface to be unbridled. There's so many wonderful things that are happening with this crossover where it's just completely reimagined, and it's allowed that potential to rise and for people to come together in these ways and in these spaces. And that's something else that happens only when complete destruction and chaos happens, is it actually does allow that stuff to really come to the surface, because when everything has been challenged, the question of why not becomes, well, let's just do it then.
Absolutely. Yeah, Miriam. Oh, you're muted. What are you saying?
Unmute myself. And I think the key to it is that the expressiveness and the creativity that's been happening is all about collaboration. When people come together to be expressive, you know, it does something else, not just to our brains, but to our bodies and to our hearts. You know, that there's strong evidence to show that, and that's the key to it. You know, so but by doing that, I think what we show, whether through our expressiveness or through just our actions, that we are creating the world that we want. This is the world what we want. We don't want, we don't want a competitive, world full of conflict and difference. We want this world of inclusion and radical generosity and creativity and building things from the ground up and living with less and all of those things that, we've seen. That's the world we want.
Absolutely.
So we're making it and doing it and showing it.
Yeah.
And I think that where my perspective, which I agree, I'm not saying I disagree with anything that's been said, where my perspective is slightly a little bit different, is working on the current systems that exist to create an equitable outcome for everybody, which is land swaps. Because it doesn't matter how much a person's mortgage is, whether they're insured or not, they can move the home if it's possible to be relocated, and the land title is swapped. So if you have a high mortgage or a low mortgage, or you're not insured or you are insured, it makes no difference. You're just offered flood-free land. So I think that working on the current policies that exist and the government mechanisms that exist, it's extremely possible. I've met with the architect of the Grantham land swap, who has personally said my proposal about land swaps is not only possible, it really makes sense in context of what's happened in Lismore. So
and
I think
like some of what you're sharing is about like generating more possibilities and more joy and more connection and more reason for feeling nourished, alongside seriously improving conditions for our lives right now and improving our ability to thrive and survive in the community that we call home, that we have connection to.
keeping people
here.
keeping people here that make the community. If everybody leaves, they accept a buyback and leave, the community as we know it is going to change dramatically. And for me, it's centered in keeping the people here, like we've got in this webinar, in this community with the voices that make it the beautiful place that it is today.
So much fun.
Maybe the empowering and liberatory nature of expressiveness and working together in the way we have might give us the energy and the bravery to go start demanding that stuff, go start speaking up about that stuff.
Let's hope. I've got a proposal that I pre-prepared for this event. No, not really. I pre-prepared it months ago. But
I got a number. I got the number. I'm looking for people to come with me.
But I agree with you, Bim. Like, let's hope. And we need that creativity to get people in a place where they do feel confident, they do feel settled, and their nervous system isn't overloaded with trauma, Yeah.
With and alongside, yes, and not either or. Like, we're seeing that like binaries don't work. False dichotomies don't work. We're here to generate like the thing that brings the thread of these people together. And why I wanted you to all come together is because you're really you're generating more possibility. You're generating more possibility, and you're creating more outcomes where, institutional like top down, like those kinds of top down kind of institutions and situations are forcing us in our community into thinking that we have a false yes or no. And you know, this stuff can be political. We're having a holistic yarn about what matters to us in community, but you know, it is political. It doesn't mean that we're going to be, you know, we're not out here slandering people for no reason. We're not out here like being angry for no reason. We're having a yarn holistically about the fact that we need to generate things that make this more survivable, have a bit of fun, get a bit of healing, also demand more and better for our community and for the people and the place that we live in. Look, that's a bit of a tangent from me. I do want to ask, I do want to make some time for maybe like 2 or 3 questions from the audience. And we are nearly 20 minutes to 8. So I do just want to give, if there's 2 people who could just put their Zoom hand up, I'm just going to pick randomly. And then if like, maybe not everyone wants to respond, but a couple people want to respond, or if there's a specific question to a specific person, can I see the Zoom hands go up, please? Or the icon. Or you can unmute yourself and we'll see who comes first. I can't see any hands up. Is there anyone that wants to ask a question? So interesting. I love that. Maybe everyone's just dumb.
Question.
Yeah.
If the audience doesn't, I would love to know the lessons that everybody's learnt in their journey around those things that along the way that they went, oh, if I could have, I would have maybe tweaked that or done that a little bit different, those big aha moments, because I bet there would be a lot.
That sounds great. Let's do that.
I raised my hand. I don't know if I'm
Hi, Gray.
set. Hi, everyone. What was that? Now I've forgotten the bloody question.
You can come back if you want.
But sorry, what was the question again, though? That because there was a.
I think Kate said, you know, what would the lessons be to the speakers about what they would want to share with people about what they would do differently or they wish they knew? Is that right, Kate?
Now I remember. The thing for me that sort of hit me when, like, my last day in the property I'd been living in was the day of the big flood. And my stuff was at a friend's unit, garage. It got totaled, and because it went so high, a lot of stuff that would have floated actually ended up getting held under and getting full of water. The rush to clear it out and get everything out of the garage, to get it out on the street, meant that there was almost no time to go through stuff and rescue stuff. You know, had a big bag of clothes that I probably could have washed, but when I was there helping to move the stuff out, you know, I got a dodgy knee, and when I moved the drenched queen-size mattress, I buggered it. And there were volunteers who were there, and I think my friend actually paid them. I don't know. But it was all basically tossed out so quickly that there was just, and landlords were just like, get it out, move it, do it now. So there was barely any chance to actually try and recover stuff. And, you know, I'd love to see that change, where we actually get a bit of time to go through it instead of 2 days after the day after the water goes down. Get in there and get all your crap out so we can start cleaning up, which of course they couldn't do.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a really valuable thing to throw in the mix. And I think that there's a lot of people here who would share those feelings or have similar experiences. So thank you. Does anyone of the speakers just want to speak to any of that? Harper?
I would like to try and address that, but also another question that just came through. Real estate agents, and excuse my language, are bastards. Unfortunately, we live in a society in Australia where real estate agents have a lot more control and sway than they should. Housing is a human right, and everybody's human right should be upheld, regardless of whether you're a renter or you own your own property. And it's not fair that the way that real estate agents try and run the place like they're some kind of cartel. That needs to go in the bin. Anyway, so I just want to acknowledge that what happened, I can't speak on the legality of it, but what I can say is it's not moral, it's not ethical, and everybody should have the time to go through their belongings, particularly when the house isn't going to be fixed in a day anyway. It's not like it's going to, you know, in 2 days it's going to be fixed. You should have time to go through your stuff. Now, there's another question that's come through by Luke, and this is just my opinion, and what I can add to that is what I would say in the scope of the work that I'm doing and the advocacy that I'm doing. I'm not trying to change the capitalist nature of Australia or in general neoliberalism. Whilst I acknowledge that it's not a functional system and it will eventually self-implode, what I'm trying to do is work with the systems that we've currently got to get a more public sector approach. In terms of land swap, it's more public sector approach. It's a bit of a safety net. Similar in Medicare, it's one of the best healthcare systems in the world statistically, and it is that mix of public and private sector approach. Whilst it definitely could be better, particularly in the last couple of years under the Liberal government, my focus primarily is trying to leverage on the systems that currently exist to get a more equitable approach through public sector, like in Grantham, where they had that land swap, which was more public sector approach. So that's all I can really add to that in terms of the advocacy that I'm doing. But I definitely acknowledge that the free market isn't working, and the free market has no ability to regulate itself, and it will not regulate itself.
So Mim, what would you like to offer? And thanks, Harper. Oh, you're on mute. Classic. We all do it.
I've got the record for doing it though, so yay for me. In response to Luke's question, I'm aware that we kind of have shifted into a stage where groups are forming around shared concerns, starting to think about moving.
You mean in our recovery, Mim? Do you mean like
in our recovery, and into what Luke was saying is, can we maintain this communal effort? Can we try and establish something that will be ongoing into the future? So it's including small scale things just in my little neighborhood, trying to come together in community gardening, and social space that we want to create. It's coming together in people starting to think about how they might move onto land and relocate their houses, and and create in a different way of living that's more that's more self-sufficient, different ways. There's also some groups are kind of coming together of activists who've been forest activists and other kinds of activists coming together now to think about ways that what they've been doing might be related to immediate targets and events and issues in Lismore that they might take action on and continue to do. So there's a sort of the activist side. Some of that is going to include things like guerrilla gardening and there's people doing things like, there's people who are the really free market, a community garden. There's other things that have kind of were there, but they've grown up since the flood. I think there's a potential for it, whether it's in an artist space, a forest space, a gardening space, more and more people putting in, starting to strengthen their little neighborhood networks and so on. I think it's possible. Not necessarily probable, but I have hope that it can.
In answer to Mim as well, like in regards to Luke's question here, and I think that's what's happening in these spaces. I think, activists often create something completely new in a space. It's a rethinking of a problem and dealing with a messy problem in a completely different new way. And what I've realized over the last few years, and then very much on an accelerated journey since the floods, is that you can't create, so the systems aren't working in their current form, and you can't then create a solution using a model that fits within that system and expect change to really occur. And so I found that I was kind of hitting these walls trying to do that. And when I flipped the script and went, actually, no, what I need to be doing is creating something that's got more ebb and flow, a lot more spaciousness, that's a bit more dynamic, that also looks like me living those values from my family, my home, my space out, rather than trying to create quite a systemized approach to this particular solution, which for me at first was really focusing on keeping rescuers safe and having a rescue led operation that looked almost like the organizations that I had worked in or volunteered for. So it's this completely new approach that that to these problems and to this space. And so that's I think what has kept me sane in moving forward, is acknowledging that the systems and the structures are challenged, and that I'm giving myself permission and permission to those I work with and create with and co-create with to just do it our way. And maybe that will be the long game, the marathon, rather than the sprint. And that takes a lot of, there was an urgency and a desperation in me to fix the problem now. But I realized that too is not realistic, that there needs to be a transformational space between what wasn't working, the chaos that we've all dealt with, and then the new space that we're moving into.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm just going to I'm just going to loosely bring our yarn in a little bit. We've got 10 more minutes to go. So Harper, do you have a quick response? And then I'm going to start bringing us back.
Yeah, all I would like to say in terms of house relocation, and when we look at areas of social disadvantage, it's not about the haves and have-nots, but it is about acknowledging disadvantaged populations and where they are situated on floodplains, and that's irrespective. And that's why we have social security and different programs in Australia, and just generally in life, we try to look after the most vulnerable. But what I would say is anybody that has finance, which will be the majority, I would love to see multiple occupancy. I would love to see a new way of living. But unfortunately, if you currently have a mortgage, a bank is not going to allow you to move your house onto a multiple occupancy title. So there needs to be some solution for people that fall outside of lending criteria, which is increasing due to the deteriorating market conditions, and also need to be able to relocate their home because of severe and more frequent flooding due to climate change. So that's all I would like to add to that.
So in sort of two things, we've got 9 minutes. What I do want to say is there's going to be a follow-up, like one-off newsletter to everyone who registered that's going to have more information about what everyone's doing. But I do want to invite the circle, the speakers, just to share if there's like literally a couple of sentences, couple of things that you want people to know about what you are doing now and into the future. I'd love you to each share that. And then I do have one more thing I want to ask you, and then we're going to close for the night. So if you could do short, sharp, what do you want these beautiful 30 people to know? Rebecca?
What I would like people to know is that being one person in a community, particularly in the trauma that we've been in, you can absolutely make a difference to so many people. It's not a hard thing to do. So just go with your heart. Know that even the smallest act of kindness that you can offer can have a profound impact.
Wow, beautiful.
I would love people to know that as a community, wherever you are, you can self-initiate rescue planning by creating things before the disaster happens, that you can feel empowered by doing that. And I would be more than happy to support anybody who would like to know how.
That's so beautiful.
Oh, just sorry, on the back of that, I would also, we've actually, Jodie, the co-founder of the Heart Space, and I have discussed being able to share the journey that we've been through with the banners and the Heart Space with other communities nationally. That's something that we'd love to be able to do. I keep telling her I've probably got enough things to do right now, but in the future, that's something that we would be really interested in sharing. And if anybody's would like to talk to me about the process of where we've got to, how it's come about, more than happy to be contacted and discuss that further.
Beautiful. Paul, what about you? What do you want people to know?
Well, in as far as the project that I'm working on, currently looking for more funding, looking to keep it going next year, and to keep offering these kind of creative recovery projects for the community. I mean, the project I'm focused that I've got at the moment is for the queer community, but I'm also looking into having some other offerings out there for the broader community over at the Quad, and yeah, just trying to activate Lismore and keep offering these opportunities for people to connect with others, and to just have a bit of a release through creativity and creative practices.
Beautiful. Yeah. Ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, I just think important to recognize so much good work that is going on, flood recovery groups, the radio network people, and a range of other things that people are coming together to do real things that are going to be helpful into the future. They're just doing it themselves, and just recognize all that great stuff, because you feel like, you know, we're just all being swept away and we don't know what the future is, but people are doing stuff. And I think they're strengthened, and I think some of those things are going to go on. I'm feeling, you know, I can feel extremely negative at any moment when I think I don't know what the bloody hell, where the bloody hell I'm going next. But I go back to that and see that great work that's going on. So that gives me hope, and keep on doing the things I'm doing, and teaching my dance class and working with little kids, and enjoying life too as well.
Thank you. Absolutely. Harper, is there anything else you want people here to know?
All I'd say is you can literally do anything if your heart's in it and you believe in it. Anybody has the capacity to stand up and speak on what they believe in and what they truly want to see in themselves, in the community, in the greater spectrum of life and the universe. There's nothing stopping you or anybody else from speaking up for what you believe in, and anything is possible if you care deeply enough. We have a beautiful community here, which I think has been more than evidenced in all of the speakers we've heard tonight, and just in the fact that you've put this event on, and all of this in itself has been grassroots, and that is so empowering, and anybody can do that.
Thank you so much, Harper. Look, we got a couple of minutes left. I'm wondering if rapid fire, what do we all do to take care of ourselves and to sustain our participation in shaping change in our community recovery in the climate crisis? Quick responses, people. Let's share. What do you do, Kate?
Coming to the heart space, doing craft, reading,
Beautiful.
playing with my beautiful daughter, and walking our fabulous pooch.
Dancing with with children, yeah, is the most fun and best thing I love doing.
Walking my dog and talking to the community and just connecting with people.
For me, it seems to be coming up with nonstop ideas about things that I can do to give back to the community and to support people and give them hope and joy. Probably at the detriment of my own personal time, but I think it probably keeps me going. Keeps me from, you know, thinking about the things that we don't have anymore, because we have so much.
Lots of relate. I would just say that would be my response.
Yeah.
Oh,
Drinking.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Breathing, meditating, moving. I mean, in our workshop, we've learned a self-care dance, which is, yeah, using different embodied practices that help regulate our nervous system. You know, and the butterfly taps, and yeah, so you know, it seems really silly, but sometimes I'm super stressed, and all I have to do is that, and I just drop down and come back, you know. So yeah, I guess that's for me, and being with friends and community. You know, I'm fortunate to be really connected to many beautiful people, and they really help me. Yeah, and we help each other, you know.
beautiful. Thank you, Paul. And look, I want to give you all a second just to write, what do you do? And we've seen some people say they play piano, love a good butterfly tap, weaving at the Healing Hub on Wednesdays. Yeah, there's lots of people sharing healing oneself, working on that from the inside out. Yeah, keep dropping those in, keep sharing what you do for yourself to sustain yourself. And look, once again, I just want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. We are at a close for our yarn together tonight on our recovery, our way. Stories from the Lismore locals who are shaping change in the climate crisis. And I really want to thank all of our speakers, all of you amazing people, Kate, Rebecca, Paul, Miriam, Harper, all of you people who I can see who are from our community, who are from neighboring affected communities doing your own thing. Those of you who are coming from further afield, listening and learning and spending time with us. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We're going to send a follow-up newsletter showcasing more of the amazing work that each person who's come tonight is doing, and you'll get their contact details there too. So thank you so much for spending the time and joining us here, and yeah, just acknowledge Widjabul Wia-bal country, and let's tread lightly together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, everyone.
This recording is going to be up online, so we're going to share it just so that people can learn for more time in the future. Thank you.
Thanks all the speakers.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.